Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished professional who has decided to become an entrepreneur from Pune, India, but speaking to us currently from Heathrow, London, Mr. Vilas Deshpande. Vilas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Vilas is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Vayve Mobility, and he has spent a lot of time with Procter & Gamble. So, Vilas, after a successful career in P&G, what made you become an entrepreneur?
Yes, indeed. That's a very interesting question. So it starts back with my interest in sustainability. Even in my previous roles at Procter & Gamble, I had an element of sustainability in my work. And then in addition, I am a hands-on engineer right from my childhood. So I always loved tinkering with things. And that led to my house in Cincinnati, being very well equipped in terms of efficiency for energy use, for indoor air quality, and so forth. So that led me was to then consider buying an electric vehicle in 2015. And I loved the concept so much. The only vehicle available at that time was the Nissan
Yes,
Leaf.
sir.
Not the greatest car in the world, but definitely the one that was present at that time. So we bought it, and the entire family fell in love with it. So over the last 7 years, we've driven exclusively electric vehicles.
Wow.
And I see a tremendous potential for electric vehicles in the world, and none particularly so than in India. And of course, India being my roots, it made the greatest sense. It's partly personal, it's partly business. Indian consumers are very much curious about electric vehicles, and therefore it made sense to come to India and do something in the space.
Amazing. And when you say that this India is a very big market, for our viewers and listeners, what are the key benefits of driving an electric vehicle as compared to the traditional oil or gas powered vehicles?
Indeed. And so I'll start with the first big segment of vehicles in India that has almost seen a complete transformation to date, and that is the two-wheelers.
Correct.
In the world of two-wheelers, the Indian consumer, and not just in this, but in most parts of their choices, Indian consumers really focus on value. Yet they always have this underlying theme of what can I be doing to help, particularly the environment, because we have all lived for decades, if not more, with the effects of particulate emissions and in general, emissions from internal combustion engines in our cities. And the most visible of that is a two-wheeler engine and the exhaust from it. So people have always wondered, what could I do to kind of reduce this impact on me, my family, and others around me? So what it turned into was a dual win. The electric vehicle revolution in India has started with two-wheelers. And what that has done is provided people with a vehicle that they know is really making a difference in the air quality around them, as well as coming out with a total cost of ownership over 3, 4, 5 years, which actually is much better than buying petrol for their two-wheeler in the past. So that is making a huge shift. So there is these two elements: being competitive with the existing two-wheeler industry, as well as having that benefit, which people get really on a subliminal level, and have always been wanting to make that change.
Fascinating. And from a consumer perspective, I understand that there are significant price advantages also, in terms of what we are going to be consuming for petrol or diesel versus electric.
Absolutely, and that's the case. So with the two-wheeler example, so the starting price of a vehicle, which is well made and is relatively high quality, is on the higher side. So a two-wheeler that people would buy in India, expecting it to run for them for multiple years, it would start at about 1 to 1.5 lakhs, and that's the range. The 1.5 is probably on the high end, but that's the range that people can buy a good two-wheeler today. The interesting thing is the electricity needed to run it is so low, and the bills that people would pay for it is so low that the total cost of ownership for them really ends up being just a tiny bit fraction over the cost of the initial cost of the vehicle. Versus a petrol two-wheeler is initially cheaper, but especially as people have seen in recent years with fuel prices increasing, the total cost of ownership does increase quite a bit over its lifetime. And people have made that calculation, and they have understood that I may end up paying a little bit more in the beginning, but in the end, I will actually save money. And that is what is driving a lot of purchase decisions today.
Amazing, amazing. So when you took a decision to start Vayve Mobility, what was the process? I mean, I haven't met too many people who say, I like a car, and so let me build my own car. And not just one car, but let me build a company that will go to benefit so many other people. What has been the process you have followed to design and build Vayve Mobility?
Indeed. And there's a huge element of luck here.
Okay.
You absolutely cannot build a car company alone. It has to be a very strong team of people. That's where it starts. And not just a strong team of people, but a very passionate and committed team of people. So I'm very lucky to have three co-founders with me. And it also is an amazing story on how I met them. So I was working in India for Procter & Gamble as the head of marketing purchases between 2012 and 15. At that time, I was asked to join an industry body that was rebuilding the television audience measurement system for the country.
Okay.
Through a series of really interesting coincidences, I met two of my co-founders at that time. They had just graduated from IIT Bombay, one with master's and the other with a PhD in electronics and electrical engineering. And what ended up being a small piece of that project being awarded to them as initial entrepreneurs just starting off in the industry. By the time I had left India and had come back to Cincinnati on my P&G journey, they had built the confidence of the organization that was doing this work to eventually build the largest industrial IoT system in India, probably one of the largest audience measurement systems in the world, on the basis of their very clear understanding of what was needed and the ability to brilliantly execute.
Wow.
So this connection stayed with me for over the last 10 years. And then when it came time for me to think about what should I be doing next, especially in the space of electric vehicles, lo and behold, they were thinking the same thing as well.
Amazing.
And so Saurabh Mehta and Nilesh Bajaj and Ankita Jain, three of the co-founders that I'm with today, they made a bold decision to move to Pune and really just start building an electric vehicle company.
Amazing.
So I was watching them remotely over some time, and then eventually I ended up joining them last year.
How incredible. How incredible. And when you talk of Vayve Mobility, I was looking at some of the new designs that you launched recently in the motor fair. Your car looks very, very nice. But what would you say are some of the key features you have in Vayve Mobility that differ from so many more EVs available now in the market?
Absolutely. And I think the first one is we chose to not go into market spaces which already have a number of players there. So that immediately ruled out two-wheeled vehicles. So then we looked at what is needed today, particularly on personal mobility. And as soon as we focus on that, we see a huge gap in the market for personal mobility in the city, which really falls into two distinct categories today. One would be your two-wheeler, whether petrol or electric, and then you immediately have to step up to an entry-level hatchback to really get the comfort of a cabin and to be able to have protection from the rain and from pollution and from safety as well. And the gap between those two is quite large. You could be looking at a vehicle, like I said, an electric two-wheeler in the 1 or 1.5 lakh range, and then you have to jump all the way up to a 5 lakh vehicle if you want a nice hatchback. And so if you then think about now the beginnings of the four-wheeler car industry in India, the entry level for that vehicle jumps up to 10 or 12 lakhs. And that gap between 1 or 2 to 10 is quite large, and we see a real need to have something in the middle, an electric vehicle that is perfectly designed for urban commuting. And now the interesting thing here is a couple of points. Uh, Typical car usage for daily commuting in India, and actually most of the world as well, but let's talk about India. It's really 1.5 is the average occupancy of a vehicle. So typically you'll have a single person or maximum two people in a car in about, I would say, more than 90% of uses. So that means that a vehicle is really over designed with 5 seats and getting ever bigger nowadays for doing a simple job of taking somebody to work or dropping off kids or having somebody go visit relatives in the city. So there's a need for smaller vehicles. There's a huge effect here that we can have in terms of efficiency of usage of resources, of infrastructure and electricity used to move people on personal errands around the city. So that's the reason we chose a small vehicle, a narrow body vehicle that can carry 2 adults and a child, and do it in a way where the TCO will be very much in favor of somebody wanting to just meet these requirements and meet them really well. So we have a very well designed and a well featured vehicle that really replicates the experience of being in a premium hatchback, but yet at the same time is light on so many other parts of impact.
So are you saying that your target customer will be someone who's beginning to look at upgrading from the two-wheeler?
So initially, no. And that's one of the questions that people ask is, how would you expect a small family to buy such a small vehicle? It's not going to function for them as a family car. And the intent is not to be that. Now, in some cases, increasingly, we see nuclear families in India. There's the husband and wife and one child. So for them, that could work as a family vehicle as well. But I think that'll take some time for adoptions to pick up. Where we really see the beginning is a family that already has a car that they pretty much rarely take out because they're really kind of bothered by the hassle of driving on crowded roads. There's no place to park when they reach someplace in the city, and they typically use it for longer distance drives and then for taking the entire family from point A to point B. But for that daily use, that constant use day in and day out, they may have a two-wheeler or they may be using taxis to get around. And this is where a vehicle like EVA would be a perfect fit for them. And as you'll see, as this has happened in the past with other technologies, the adoption really grows exponentially once a few people have shown, hey, wait, this really works for me. And it's a huge thing. And word of mouth really takes a big role here. So we expect that to be a second vehicle in the beginning. But we definitely see a tremendous amount of people saying, hey, this could be the only vehicle I need while I'm in the city. And for other uses, I can rent a car, I can use public transport, I have other options. So multimodal mobility really is going to be big in the future with electric vehicles.
Very interesting. And did you say the brand was EVA?
So the name of the vehicle is EVA. That's our first vehicle, which we showed at the Auto Expo in Delhi.
What a great name. What a great name. Thank you for telling me about this. So my next question to you, Vilas, is that there are a lot of concerns that people have about electric vehicles. And one of them is range, which seems to be common for all EVs. What are your thoughts and how are you handling it at EVA?
So that's a great question, and I think I have a tremendous amount of personal knowledge here. At least I can claim that because, like I said, my family has only driven electric vehicles for the last 7 years. We don't have a petrol car in the family. So it's a journey of learning a new vehicle and a new drivetrain. The initial expectation or the baseline that people start with as a consumer, and I did the same thing as well, was to try to replicate in exact terms how a petrol car behaves with an electric vehicle. And that leads to these comparisons to say, oh my God, why the range is not large enough? What if I get stranded and so forth? And then that leads to decisions about the charging capability of the vehicle. So when I bought my first electric cars, I absolutely made sure that they had fast charging capability so that I could quickly charge them if I were to run low at some point, right? But then the reality is, in the 7 years that I have been driving these cars, I have used the fast charging capability in a handful of times. The real convenience is in shifting your mind entirely to a new form of transportation that doesn't require refueling at any point. Why would I want to spend any of my time going to a charging station away from home and spending time and effort and money charging my vehicle there, when the easiest thing with electric vehicle, especially for use within the city, is I come home and I just plug in at my parking spot, and then the car charges overnight. I really do not care how slow or fast it charges. I do this with my phone. I go to bed and I plug in my phone. In the morning, it's charged. That's all I need, and the rest of the day I have a fully charged car.
Correct.
So that's the mind shift that we need. But of course, we can't really kind of gloss over the fact that people do need a certain amount of range to be comfortable with a vehicle. So what we chose to do was to make sure we have a vehicle which is going to be in the 250-kilometer range with a single charge. And that really evaporates most people's concerns about a car's range, especially when in a typical day, they may only travel 30, 40, 50, and in the worst case, 100 kilometers. Nobody really expects or wants to be driving more than that in their daily routine. So we have more than well taken care of their daily requirements here.
Well said, well said. And the other challenge that a lot of people have been discussing with me, because I've been talking of getting an EV myself, move from a hybrid car to an EV, is the charging infrastructure. We live in a condominium where there are 4 points that have been set for charging infrastructure, but that's not convenient. And then, of course, there is charging infrastructure needs on highways. How are you handling the need for this charging infrastructure?
Right. And this is well beyond Vayve mobility. This is a matter of policy. This is a matter of industry.
Correct.
And what we see are there's great optimism here in terms of what we see happening in the industry and on the ground in real life. Because the Indian government is strongly looking for adoption of electric vehicles in the coming decade. There is a huge amount of policy support for infrastructure building in this space. There's a huge amount of large industries involved in setting up these networks of charging points across our cities. And also a tremendous, huge cottage industry, which has popped up with startups and small and medium businesses who are wanting to be part of this new revolution of installing electric charging infrastructure. So by the time we come to market, which is going to be in 2024, we already expect to see a large seeding of charging points across our major cities. But like I said, the main focus for a city car would be to be charged at home. And so what we are really looking forward to is at the state level and local level, there's now legislation being done to ensure that somebody who's living in a housing society, if they want to install a charging point at their assigned spot, they should be able to do that. And there's going to be, I would say, pretty exponential adoption of this as people see the benefits. And of course, better and better technology evolves so that people can be secure about having a charging point that nobody else is using contact cards and so forth to make sure that only they're using that facility for themselves. But that's how we see this evolving. So as a company, we are not going to be focusing on development of the infrastructure for charging, but we will rather rely on where the industry is heading. And we see a really bright future here, so that should not remain a concern for most people going forward.
Fabulous. And the other question that I had was that I understand government policy is also coming up with saying that there should be standardization in charging ports and batteries. How will this work? I mean, because, especially for batteries, there is going to be, a multiplicity of vendors who will probably say my battery is better than your battery.
Indeed, indeed. So let's talk about the charging infrastructure and the standardization there, right? So again, it's really hard to mandate what a charging protocol should be for everybody, but it typically ends up that market forces end up taking us in a certain direction. And that direction that we see going today is in the CCS2 technology, which is being adopted by most vehicles being sold in India. And when I say vehicles, I'm talking really about the four-wheelers, which need that level of technology. So that we see is becoming the de facto standard in India, and that's what we intend to follow as well. Then in the case of batteries, now there's two different ways to think about batteries. If you look at two-wheelers and the small vehicles, even some three-wheelers, the battery is removable. And that's obviously intentional because then you can take the battery out of the vehicle and then take it somewhere else to charge, because the battery does not weigh more than, I would say, 20 kilos or 30 kilos, something that a person could reasonably handle. But then as soon as you go to a four-wheeler, the battery size really becomes much larger. So in the case of EVA, which is a small vehicle, our battery will still be 100 to 150 kilos in weight.
Wow.
So that's no longer a case of being able to swap batteries, and we don't believe that is a practical solution in this form factor. So in that case, the battery is an integral part of the vehicle, and it's engineered and designed for that particular use case, that particular manufacturer, and the choices they make. So that will not, I don't see a case where that level of standardization will happen across the industry. So there will be standards for the swappable two-wheeler batteries, yes, and that may proceed in that direction. But really for larger vehicles, integral batteries are really the way to go. And that will lead to the manufacturers like ourselves really designing the battery for that vehicle as it is.
Wonderful. And I have time for two more questions. So my next question is, how large is the EV market in India, and how do you see it growing?
So the EV market today really is a small fraction of where the automotive industry is today, right? And this is just the starting point. This is the starting point of an exponential growth in electric vehicles in India.
Correct.
So if you look at projections for just the space that we are interested in, right? We could be looking at small entry-level hatchbacks, right? I mean, we are talking of millions and millions of vehicles being sold in the next few years, every year. So just all you have to do is say, okay, what % of this will switch over to electric vehicle? And already you have scales which far exceed what other markets are going to be able to even think about. So I think the scale of the industry or the scale of demand is not going to be in question. I think it's going to be the ability of the industry to supply high quality vehicles which meet the needs of people today and tomorrow at a price point and at a value which people will want to adopt. So that really is where I see the big challenge for all of us in the industry. The demand is there, and it is going to be extremely fast growing as we go into the next few years.
Amazing. And when it also comes to car companies, I don't have so much knowledge, but from whatever I read, I understand one of the biggest challenges most car companies face is to set up a very strong service network, so that the car can be serviced wherever it is needed. But I also understand that for like EVs, servicing is not such a big challenge. How are you handling this for EVA and for Vayve?
So this is going to be another area where the industry will have to rapidly evolve. The business model for car dealerships, which is really the point where servicing gets done at a local level, that business model really heavily depends on the income that they get from servicing internal combustion engine cars. But as you rightly said, electric vehicles have such few parts that need any kind of maintenance. It's almost funny that there is really no need to have any maintenance on a well-built and well-designed vehicle.
Correct.
So in the last 7 years, in my own example, I hardly took any of the vehicles to a dealership, maybe once or twice. The only other maintenance that I had to do, which could be done in any other place, was replacing tires and maybe the occasional windshield wiper and filling the windshield wiper fluid by myself, right?
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
it's just ridiculously simple in how good it is for the consumer experience, electric vehicle.
Fabulous. And
So
my
given
yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So given that context, uh, the electric vehicle industry will evolve to have a different business model for dealerships. There's more going to be a trend towards sometimes multi-brand experience centers that may be set. And we have, through the exposure we got at the Auto Expo, we have hundreds of inquiries from around India and outside India as well, interestingly, for people who want to set up this kind of a model with us in the future.
Amazing.
So it's wonderful to see that even the incumbent parts of the industry are ready to shift. They sense that change coming, and even with a vehicle which is groundbreaking and creating new category in the market, something like EVA, we had dealers coming up and literally saying, no, 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 you shouldn't talk to anybody else for this part of India. That's me. I'm going to be doing this kind of a dealership. So it will go towards a very interesting model with different compensation models for dealers, but they are firmly in there with the long game here, and they are very excited to move ahead with us.
Wonderful. And my last question to you, Vilas, and now this comes back to you personally. As someone who has been with large companies and has become an entrepreneur, and this question is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation. What would you say are 3 lessons that you want our viewers and listeners to take away from your journey, starting off as an entrepreneur after such a successful corporate career?
Indeed, and that's a really, really good question, because it is a huge shift to come from a very large corporate job and become an entrepreneur. I would say that the top 3 things would be, the first one is humility. Because where you may be coming from in terms of a corporate career, you could be at the peak of your performance, you could be at the peak in your industry, people know you, and then by choice, you choose to become an entrepreneur in a space that you know nothing about. And the first thing you need to bring is humility, because you need to learn a lot.
Correct.
And this learning process I've been through many, many times in my own career, but nothing as broad and deep as I have gone through as becoming an entrepreneur in the automobile industry.
Amazing.
So readiness to learn from everybody and willingness to set aside your own ego to say, well, I know nothing, teach me. The second one is going to be, it's an interesting one. Like I said, I'm working with my co-founders who have done business in India before. I had never done business, at least on the personal level, at this kind of a scale. So the one thing I learned from my team and from others that I talked to in the entrepreneurship journey in India is, you have to be shameless. And this is a very interesting concept for me, coming from a very kind of average, I would say, uh, uh, middle class family in India, right? Uh, who has not really been into business before. The ability to go to people and say, hey, I need something, and be ready for rejection and for no's, that's something that you're not prepared for through your education, your training, your social upbringing. And this is something that I have been grateful to have been told is okay. And you should not hold yourself back, because you never know where the opportunity might lead you.
Correct.
And then the last one is on risk taking. There's always this dream that everybody has, is like, I would love to take a risk and I would like to make it big somewhere, right? But very few people actually go through with it. And I just wish that people would dare a little bit more. You should have a lot more faith in yourself and those around you, that even if you do fail, and you should try this in small steps. I would never recommend you take a massive risk, but try learning with small risks in life, so that you can build yourself even better than what you were the day before. And I think those three things really stick with me quite a bit.
Amazing. As you were telling me about your 3 lessons, it took me back to 2003 when I started Guardian after large companies. And, the 3 lessons, I could almost hear myself speaking. Number 1, you said, was humility and have the readiness to learn and manage your ego. Second, you said, was be shameless, don't hold back, never hesitate to ask. All that the other person will say is no, but you can always ask. And the third one you said was be a risk taker, have faith in people. And also you said take small risks. Vilas, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me about your incredible journey from the corporate world to becoming an entrepreneur. Thank you for talking to me about Vayve mobility, electric vehicles. Thank you for talking to me about EVA and all the different aspects of how you're going to take EVA and Vayve mobility to the next level in our country. And believe me, I will be standing at the head of a queue wanting to buy EVA as soon as it is made available. Thank you again for speaking to me at 4:30 in the morning for you in the UK, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. It has been a real pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.